Hello there. It's one more edition of Dojo Live sponsored by Ancora. This is your host, Ram Ganesan, speaking from New Jersey, and I'm joined by Tulio Siragusa in our Wednesday 10 a.m. Pacific segment. And Tulio is joining us from Los Angeles, California. And I have the pleasure of having Brad Hollister and Jason Swanson from Swan Leap joining us today from Madison, Wisconsin. Brad and Jason, welcome to Dojo Live.
Hey guys, thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
That's great. And our topic of discussion is from Craigslist to the Inc. 500 list, revolutionizing shipping and logistics technology. Swan Leap is a software logistics technology company that is recently number one on Inc. 500 and Deloitte Fast 500. So a really prestigious ranking to achieve. Congratulations, gentlemen. And before we go into talking more about Swan Leap and your story there, I would like to really understand your backgrounds a little more. So Brad and Jason, if you could give us a 30-second, 1-minute snippet of who you are and what makes you tick.
Sure, I'm Brad Hollister. I had done a lot of different things in the industry. I worked on the shipper side. I worked helping companies reduce costs in small parcel. I worked for a national publicly traded freight carrier. I even brokered freight. And when I looked at the state of the industry in 2008, I thought, this is ridiculous that this industry is operating this way in 2008. Fast forward 5 years later, when we started the company, nothing had changed. And so I grew up in Wisconsin with part of the UW system in my undergrad. In my free time, I like to work with other businesses and entrepreneurs on listening to their business plans and trying to help them poke holes in it. And when I'm not doing that, I'm an avid skier. So when we started this, this journey here, we really wanted to automate the way that shipping is done because there's so many inefficiencies in the manual processes and lack of visibility. So I knew what needed to happen, but I can't program anything. So I put an ad out on Craigslist because every programmer I've ever met is always the smartest programmer. Just ask them. And I had hired a lot of programmers independently through different online channels and like independent contractors. And so they all were very full of themselves for the most part. And so I put an ad out just thinking this is how programmers communicate. And I said, I'm looking for the
programmers
best.
On the show, don't feel bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, don't feel offended.
So I'm not telling them anything they don't already know. They have coworkers or have mirror in there, for themselves. But right. I put an ad out there on Craigslist saying I need the smartest developer because I got a massive project to revolutionize the world. And that's how I met this guy. Had I not had all the experience with all those people, I wouldn't have realized how different Jason truly was in understanding, the complex, a complex new industry, in a very, very short amount of time. So that's how my side of the intro and how we got here and how Jason,
Well, here's the good news. Now we get to hear from the smart guy.
Yeah, that's right. The sales guy's done talking.
Yeah. And so, Jason, over to you. So clearly, you guys did not meet on the ski slope.
No.
A Craigslist post. So was it like at a shady parking lot, like you guys doing the deal?
No, I've been programming since I was 9 years old. Went to school for neuroscience. Worked on taking massive amounts of scientific data and figuring out really how to automate it. My parents were really entrepreneurial. They had a craft show business where we traveled across Wisconsin, going to different craft shows. So my dad instilled, the entrepreneurial spirit in me. So I worked at some biotechnology companies, really trying to figure out their problems, figure out how to automate that, figure out how to really crunch the mass amount of data that you need to actually solve problems in the scientific industry. So I'm always looking for, projects, back then. So I saw Brad's ad and I actually sent him a joke response at first. I'm like, okay, you're the smartest developer in the room. Yeah, I've heard that a million times. But then he actually came back with, hey, here's why. Here's what I'm trying to do. Every physical object came from somewhere. How do you figure out how to move that efficiently? So I said, okay, I'll meet him at a restaurant. And we talked for like 10 hours straight. Here we are. So in my free time, I still like reading scientific articles, keeping up with the latest in biology and genetics and neuroscience.
That's great. So, Craigslist is not for exchanging tchotchkes and used equipment. You actually...
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
That's just amazing in terms of how that story originated from an idea to a friendship that has resulted in the #1 company in the Inc. 500 and the Deloitte Fast 500 list. So really great. So tell us how that business evolved. I'm curious to see, right? It started with a conversation in a restaurant, but what were the next steps that you took? And what were your struggles, right? Because it could not have all been #1, right? There was a journey of pain and sacrifice that must have kicked off from that conversation in the restaurant. So can you just share that entrepreneurial journey with our audience here?
Yeah, right before I met Jason, I had gone 2 years with no income at all. And so I was digging into my retirement, and like 18 months into that, I was like telling my wife, like, one more month. And like, don't worry, next month. And it didn't go that way, right? And so, as entrepreneurs kind of find their way through, I think it's important to embrace the struggles, the hurdles, the failures, because like timing was everything for us. He had joined a startup a couple of years before, and think about anybody who joins a new company or a startup, they're super excited to get in there, and like I get pitched, I don't know, we all get pitched, I think, on LinkedIn and all kinds of places all the time, right? And some of these seem like pretty decent ideas. I just don't have the bandwidth to like give any effort to look into them. And so if you were kind of hungry already and you really didn't have a lot of things going, you might have more bandwidth to find that thing, that path that you were destined to do, right? So that is a big part of this, journey for us. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but had we met 3 years later or 3 years earlier, it probably wouldn't have worked. We weren't hungry at the same time.
Yeah, Brad came to me with not just ideas. He came up with all sorts of wireframes, mock-ups. Here's the workflow. He's thinking this through from 10 different workflows and all these different streams. So we could actually put it together. It wasn't just idea here. He had some stuff already. So when you have those ideas, when you can think like a product architect like he was, it's hard to figure out how to audit the programmers that you're working with. You're skilled in the product architecture. How do you actually execute it? So I got pretty excited. I'm like, hey, I know how to actually execute it. You got a front end and the back end. You got to put them together. You got to scale it.
In many ways.
I just said, this is what it needs to do. You push this button and it goes to this screen. Like, I didn't understand that there even what a was.
Welcome to our world.
And back in that day, like I look back at like just the pure determination. I used to sit at home on the weekends and at night, and I would because I would work with the developers during the day, but to mock up and stay ahead of the programmers I had, which are all overseas, I would mock up the next screens and stuff, but I would draw them first freehand. Then I would come back and take a ruler and I would draw them with a darker shade pencil or press harder. And then when I got it the way I wanted it, I would take like one of those flare pens and I would put a ruler on and I would draw it all in, and then I would erase everything and then I'd put it on the photocopier. That's how I did mock-ups back in 20.
The good old way of doing wireframes. In many ways,
napkin frames.
Your relationship and your chemistry kind of draws parallels to me to the ultimate twosome of technology, Jobs and Wozniak. I'm pretty sure you've been called that. If you have not been, you just remind me of those two great people. And, I see a lot of that chemistry here. You're the business and product guy. He's the tech brains behind it. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of that mutual respect and disagreement and honorable conversations that go on behind the scenes to come up with a product that has grown so well. So tell us a little about how did this whole thing springboard how did it take off? These were the difficult early days, right? Dipping into your retirement funds. And I know with entrepreneurship, it's always about that, right? All the data, all the numbers look like, oh, you're not going to make it. But then you're like, one more month, one more week, one more product release. And then suddenly something clicks. So tell us a little about, what was that inflection point that created the leap for Swan Leap?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me during this journey, before I mentioned the leap, was we were just determined to make it work for one customer and get paid, and then hire another customer.
Got it.
So, there was a point when during this process where it was going so poorly, guys. I couldn't get the product developed. I couldn't get it done. I didn't have a Jason. Okay, I didn't know why the programmers were failing. I couldn't manage them, and I had to sell a car. And I went over to my dad at the time was working third shift, and so I went over to their house. I met the buyer, in front of my parents' house because they lived on a busy highway. My dad comes out of the bedroom like at noon, and he's in his whitey tighties like all of our dads are, right, in his underwear. He's like, "What are you doing?" I heard noises, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm meeting someone for the car." And he's like, "Well, how's the business going?" I'm like, "Dad, it's not going good. It's not going good at all, and I got to sell the car, and I don't know what we're gonna do for rent." And he goes, "Well, if you would just stop messing around with that stupid computer all day and go out and get a job, you wouldn't have these money problems." That was my dad's advice to me. So to answer the question, no, I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to understand that if your business only needs money to work, it's not a business, it's an idea, okay? And that's what we did different. We listened to the market. We had a background. I had a background. I worked really hard. You become quite humble and quite, good at what you do if you're not getting paid to do it. If you're not getting paid to go to work, you have to be sharp. You can't chase things. You have to focus. And I think that was what one of our secrets was to the success, was that we literally did the opposite of what Silicon Valley teaches you. Silicon Valley teaches you develop one product, and if it fits to this client, great. And if not, go to the next client. Well, we didn't have a sales force, so we didn't have that luxury. So we did something. We saw an opportunity in the market that was a little bit different. We made the product work for the first client, and then we got the next client. We made it work for them, and that's how we grew the company. Our functionality and our product roadmap is a direct reflection of the needs of our customers. There's a lot of really logical things that we get asked about. Do you have this? Yeah, well, we don't have it because no one's asked for it. Like, we don't have a mobile app. Where in a warehouse is a mobile app applicable? Well, maybe you could justify it if you had it. Maybe. And so that we've run our company that way. We run like a startup still, even though we're $200+ million in revenue. I mean, there's no place to hide it, Swan Leap. Like, you have to produce, and you have to, we have to execute. We hold ourselves to that same standard. So I think that's really important as entrepreneurs are evaluating their businesses. If all you need is money to make your business work, you don't have a business. You have an idea.
Right. And you have to work on the business, not just in the business. And if you're for the money, and I've seen this over and over again, right? Entrepreneurs who are just in it for the money have a wrong true north guiding them, and then they just lose their way because they're just chasing the dollar signs. And you had an idea, you had a passion, you had a problem that you knew needed to be solved, and then you went about putting together those wireframes and finding Jason. So that's just amazing. So Jason, how did you connect with this whole idea, and how did this scale for you on the tech side of the fence?
Yeah, so initially it was about a month straight of meeting every day and really understanding these concepts, really understanding the hundreds of mock-ups that Brad did. I basically dropped everything. I took all my savings and worked 16 hours a day for an entire year to get the initial system up. So when you're working that much, you're basically thinking about it the whole time. You got everything going on in your brain here.
In your sleep too, right?
The next step of doing that is to actually automate that. How do I mentor programmers? How do I teach programmers? How do I take people with potential and unlock their abilities? They might not even know they could do that. With the latest technology, you are getting exponential multipliers in how fast you can crank out features. So you really have the speed aspect that you need to master with that. And mentoring programmers, picking the latest technology, figuring out how to pick that technology, and really helping crank out these features initially for the initial clients and make them reusable. If you don't make them reusable, you turn into another dev shop. You got to figure out the features and figure out how to make them reusable so you can sell them to the next client as well.
Build that IP.
You know, and imagine when you're going through this process, you've invested so much because you've proclaimed to yourself that you know better than the rest of the world with your idea. Okay, your idea is better than what else is out there, an improvement. So for us, and I think I speak for Jason, reaching the Inc. #1, the fast growing company in America, was more about that validation that all the sacrifices we made were for the right reasons. You know, like to us, I think as entrepreneurs, it wasn't about them chasing money. It was about chasing validation. We had an idea. We think Oracle, you're wrong. We think SAP, you're wrong. Here's why. And we're right.
Are they frozen for you, Tulio?
Oh, they're frozen for me too. So it must be on their end. Here, they're back.
So
we lost you for a second. So quick question. So it's reminiscent to me of Link Canvas, where you validate through proof of concept with multiple clients till you hone in on what exactly you want to scale. So I'm curious, how did you eventually make the leap to go from validating, building essentially a solution based on the customer needs, to creating a roadmap? Did you ever go down the path of converting to a roadmap, or do you still do that customization across all the client base? How did you?
Yeah, we got to a point where we looked at where the bottlenecks in our business would be, and we knew we needed to get the programmers out of launching new clients. So we need to go from sales to launching the client and letting the client use the software to save themselves a ton of money in shipping. And we need to do that without getting programmers involved. So some of the early features we thought were no-brainers, like, oh, everyone's going to want this. As soon as we launch it, like, we get an angry phone call. I hate this new thing you guys did, So then it was, I kind of joke, I think we had the hardest clients first because we really got to understand and listen to them, because every single field in our system can be turned on or off by an account manager or a virtual assistant. So if someone's like, I don't want to see, an option for that. Oops. That is the level of architecture that Jason built, so that we could answer extreme customization in a matter of hours, not even days at this point.
That's great. That looks like some deep software engineering best practices there, Jason, from what I can tell. Tell us a little about your tech team and your programming culture, or your overall company culture, right? So it's largely a tech company, but I'm pretty sure there's other pieces to the pie, right? There's shipping and logistics experts, there's product teams and customer service and sales. But at the core of it, you're a software technology company. So what is your hiring culture? What is it like to be a programmer at Swanly? What are you looking for? Who's your smartest programmer in the room, if you will?
Yeah. So
besides Jason.
So we're looking for programmers who really want to utilize the latest technology. We want to figure out how to get those exponential increases. What are other companies doing? I listened to hundreds and hundreds of podcasts, and with the internet letting you see what architecture different companies are using, you can basically figure out what architecture you can use to build these things. You might need to have multiple databases for different parts of your system. Microservices where you need to decouple your front end from your back end. You might want customers who want to do your back end. So really keeping a read on this, getting programmers who are excited to keep up. There's a lot of enterprise programmers who actually don't want to keep up with that. It's just not interesting because it's scary. So we need to hire programmers who are sort of the opposite of that. They want to go into using the latest technology. They want to continue growing their careers.
So in the early days, we used to say that we found the best employees were those that, had a chip on their shoulder, or that life kind of punched in the mouth already, right? Like our best programmer came to us and he was working a job stocking shelves in the third shift at Walmart. he didn't start programming till he came here. We recognized how smart he was, and he's still with us. And that's a person that really appreciated the opportunity, wanted to get into it, etc. Around the same time we hired him, or not long after, we had a really highly recommended new college graduate come. And this is a while ago too, and times have changed a bit. But he came and interviewed, and we liked him, and he was sharp and everything. But some of his requirements were an office and $100 and some $1,000 in salary, and we're a startup, no one's making that. And so we're like, we got this amazing programmer, that was making $20,000, and now we got this kid that's like got this entitlement, like so. That's kind of been an underlying theme of people that like see what we're doing and like want to be like part of like kind of challenging the status quo, if you will, and being part of that. So that's been really exciting, to watch that grow. We also have had mixed reviews from our client base about offshore employees. Now, we don't outsource, but we do have employees in other countries. In certain parts of this country, that's like looked at as, moving American jobs overseas, et cetera. But we look at it as diversification of our culture, of our client base. Of our employee base. We're looking at it from it was an accident, but diversification in the pandemic outbreaks, for example, or potentially like geographical challenges with weather or internet outages, there's a lot of benefit to being, spread out. And as I think we've learned in the last year, we are a global society today, and our brothers and sisters across the oceans are every bit as important to those down the street from us in this current climate. So I love the most that what we've been able to do to enrich the lives of our overseas employees, and how thankful they are to come and work, and they put on the Swan Leap shirts. They celebrate the same parties with us, with cake in other countries. And that's been a really, kind of emotional, aspect to our strategy of culture.
And that's great. In many ways, we at Ancora are also a global family, and try to see that replicated at Swan Leap is definitely resonates very well. So I have two questions here. I guess they're kind of related. How did the pandemic work for you from a business standpoint? Did that affect it positively in a way? Because everything went to e-commerce, and everything went to shipping, and home delivery and curbside delivery and other things. Did that dramatically impact your business positively, or was it all before that? Did your growth happen before that, which I think it did?
Yeah, the growth happened before the pandemic, and during the pandemic, our revenue really wasn't affected. However, what we found during the pandemic is that all companies, including our own, had to do more with less, right?
Yep.
Many areas were more busy for most companies, and they couldn't afford the same amount of people, or there's like one of our major clients shut down for a month, because there was a combination of protection from the pandemic of their employees, but also the disruption of their Chinese suppliers. So as China started to open back up, then and the United States started to reach kind of the end of it, it kind of went around the world. It seems like the other way. Remember, Italy was like really, really in the news, and then London and Barcelona, these major countries and cities were shutting down, and it kind of came across. And then as that was happening, China was opening back up. So it created this like major elastic event, which is still going on right now, as covered by the Wall Street Journal and other more, media, industry related media outlets. But like there is, I saw Peloton has 197 containers in Los Angeles on the water they can't unload. That's a lot of bikes and treadmills. And so like we're still dealing with this, right? When like this elastic situation. So that hurt us. The other thing that hurt us a lot was nobody was looking to put in new software during the pandemic. No way. So we had some big contracts that were signed, and we're kind of like off the races. 2020 is our year. And then everything was like cut, stopped, paused, etc. Now, what are we supposed to do, right? Like we have these clients that like us, they want to do business with us, ask us to stop. I mean, do we sue them to go after them for fulfilling the contract, or do we kind of be patient and try to help through the year? And that's what we did, because we understood. We looked at our own business and what areas we could be more efficient. But and then it seemed like it started up again in the third quarter. Kind of fourth quarter was good, and coming in the first quarter, we're having a good first quarter. So we saw more from like a pause and wait and see. We don't know what to do. In the back half of the first quarter, most of the second quarter was a pause and look around kind of situation. So not a great year from new initiatives. It didn't really hurt our company in terms of revenue and stuff. So
That's great. So what's obviously don't reveal anything confidential, but what's 2021 and beyond looking like at Swan Leap?
Yeah, 2021 is exciting to me because of the hard work that Jason and his team did in 2019 to re-architect our system. I had the pleasure of meeting some of the leadership from Zendesk a few years ago, and they had. I had asked them in confidence, am I crazy to think that we should probably rewrite our system now that it's 5 years old? Because like it makes no financial sense to a PE firm or VC firm, zero, right? It's like you have a product, go sell it. But like I'm starting to see like minimal tasks taking a week, like our code was starting to get old. And I asked him in confidence, and he looked at me, he said, no CEO would do that. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. And he goes, that's why you should do it. He goes, you have to do it. You have to stay relative. And so we took his advice, CEO of Zendesk. And he says they rewrite on a regular basis. I think he said every year. And that is why Zendesk continues to explode while others on the same block down there in San Fran, major leading multi-billion-dollar companies seem to have a product that's now drifting into almost the point of not being able to use it. And we're customers of some of those products. So it's really an interesting thing. And so what we did during that rewrite, again, like look down the barrel of the gun. The right thing to do is always the difficult decision. Always. Like if you don't know what to do, pick the hard one because you're not going to regret it. Okay.
Right.
So we rewrote the system.
Good advice.
What's that?
That's good advice, I said.
Yeah, pick the one that's going to serve the customer, not the multiple.
That's not just business though, right? Like getting up at 6 a.m. and putting your running shoes on, you're not going to regret it. It's hard. But what we did though was we re-architected the system to add another layer that we didn't have in there before of non-transparency for the first time, to allow a freight broker, a logistics company, to receive a price from a carrier, hide that price, and give it to a shipper. So rather than Swan Leap only being able to talk to X number of clients per day, in 2021, our focus now is to give to 3PLs to essentially sell the pickaxes and shovels for the gold rush, right? Like we don't need to mine our own gold. If you use that analogy, we can just give the tool to the freight brokers so that they can feel the same and achieve the same amount of success that Swan Leap has with our tool.
So guys, we're coming up on time. It's really an observation and more of a kudos to you guys than a question. I've heard a few things that are not your typical conversation from Silicon Valley type companies, right? Driven by the VCs, driving towards multiples instead of really focusing on the customer. One thing I heard is you've built an environment where you can customize a solution within hours. And that to me sounds like a major departure from the typical software company thinking, which is, create a product, it's predictable, it's got a roadmap, because the less service you do, the more your multiples increase, right? I mean, that's been the conversation and narrative forever. But I'm hearing is the smart companies are figuring out how to use technology so they can be nimble and agile and actually help customize the solution within hours. Critical thing. Kudos for doing that. And the other thing I heard is give people an opportunity who are hungry and have desire and have grit and grace, not necessarily all the pedigree. And that served you guys well. So congratulations for that. It's amazing to hear these stories, and clearly the results speak for themselves. My question would be, in this whole journey of building this, what have you guys learned about yourselves?
You want to go first? I got one that comes to mind.
Yeah, really finding what you like to do, so you can, what are you doing in your day? What are the habits that you're doing the same thing as you did from the last? So, I really am a curious person. Keep finding a way to keep up to date with the latest technology, and literally using that in a business sense, is my thing. I just love doing that. I'm able to work 16 hours a day to go and do things like that. And it's really finding your obsession really fuels you. If you don't have your obsession and you're getting burned out, you need to take a look at yourself and figure out what your obsession is.
Be true to yourself.
Yeah, it's not work when you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
Brad, what about you?
I think I've learned that your body and your mind is so much more so much stronger than what you might think it is, and you can undergo a lot of stress and hard work, and more than is in your comfort zone. You have to get out your comfort zone to do anything great, and that does not just apply to business; it applies to everything. So, we can't be thinking about, this is what I want to do in 6 months or a year, because you're going to learn a lot if your mind is open in that time and you're listening. So we've really focused on this 90-day outlook on our company, because we can't possibly make decisions for what the market's going to want, longer than that, in the horizon. But yet, at the same time, we need to be able to execute now on what ideas and opportunities are in front of us. So we were told in the early days that we need to raise a ton of money because we got something great and the window's open now. And we didn't listen to that, honestly. We thought we could do it and run through. So as good as our results have been, and saving companies a ton of money in shipping, we can't talk to people fast enough for us to realize the potential for how good this tool is that Jason built. So so those are the I guess the takeaways that that I have is you have to execute on whatever it is that you have in front of you today. You have to produce today. And sometimes producing means resting, but you have to design that. You have to have a plan to execute on what is in front of you.
That's great. And you were true to yourselves, and you listened to yourselves, your hearts, and applied your partnership to create Swan Leap and the story at Swan Leap. And we're out of time. I could keep going on and on. It's amazing to hear the story of true entrepreneurs from the ground up. We were just listening to Brad Hollister and Jason Swanson from Swan Leap and their story of how they started from a simple Craigslist post for a programmer to being number one on Inc. 500 and Deloitte Fast 500. This is Ram Ganesan, your friendly co-host at Dojo Live, sponsored by Ancora, and I'm joined by Tulio Saragusa.
Guys, stay with us as we go off the air. Just want to quickly announce at 12 p.m. Pacific, we have another show today with Chris Ellis of Audio Cardio. And then tomorrow we have one more show at 12 p.m. Pacific with Ariel Lopez of knack.io. So 2 more shows before the week is out. See you again in about an hour and a half. Stay safe.